just a few slides that will tell you exactly what ASPA does. And we will also have some statistics relating to exactly how damaging counterfeiting is to the various segments and what is the people's take on counterfeit. So, yeah, yes, can you have the next slide, please, Daniel? So, ASPA was set up in 1998. So, it's a self-regulated organization with over 25 years of experience. Now, way back in 1988, when ASPA was set up, it used to be called Hologram Manufacturers Association of India. Because way back in those days, hologram was perhaps the key and possibly the only technology to fight counterfeits effectively. But sometime around 2014, Humayun realized that, hologram is not the only technology which is prevalent or which is, potent enough to counter the threats of counterfeiting. So then we changed the approach to ASPA, which is Authentication Solution Providers Association, which meant that we invited all technologies used in authentication to come and be a part of this platform and develop integrated solutions that had not just the holograms, but also security printing, security designing, traceability, serialization, and the works. So today, we are a robust organization of almost 85 members, and our vision is to be the voice of the global authentication and traceability solutions. ASPA is perhaps the only association of its kind worldwide. And I actually mean it. Worldwide, there is no other association like ASPA, which has the focus that ASPA does. And our mission is to develop and promote the adoption of authentication and traceability solutions. And we work largely in 4 key areas, which is awareness, advocacy, which is in industry partnership, research, and innovation. So in awareness, as far as that part goes, we conduct various conferences, webinars, and campaigns. And it's all about raising the awareness. And we try and raise the awareness not only amongst the industry, but amongst the government, the regulators, the policymakers, and also the consumers. And going forward, if we get a chance, I'll probably speak a little more about awareness, because I think the more aware the consumer is, the easier it is to counterfeit. An aware consumer is literally your policeman in the market wearing civilian clothes, yeah? Because if he's on the lookout for fake, and if he catches something that is duplicate or fake, whether it's a medicine or an apparel or a chemical, he can report it. And that really is the most difficult challenge that would be there for the consumer. We also have a lot of advocacy efforts going on, where we connect with ministries, chambers, associations, regulatory bodies, and we have several publications, which through which we spread the word about exactly the harm that counterfeiting is doing and what are the solutions that are currently available. We also have research. So here we do specialized reports. One report that this slide talks about is the Counterfeit News Repository, which is a portal that ASPA has developed where we record all the reported counterfeit issues or incidences rather. So it's a searchable database, and any person can actually go there if one wants to check exactly what has been the counterfeiting in the apparel segment, for instance, then he will get a complete report of exactly how many incidents have been reported. So we do that. We've tied up with CRISIL in 2022, and they did a report for us, which is called the State of Counterfeiting in India. I'll share some numbers with that in the next slide maybe. And one of the critical areas where ASPA again is very, very instrumental is in innovation. Because ASPA invites all members, all companies which have anything to do with authentication, whether they're a solution provider, whether they're a raw material provider, whether it's machine providers. So ultimately we realize that it's a collaboration amongst all these, and that is what really helps the solution providers develop a good solution, which is effectively applied and used by the brands. So this is the cover of the State of Counterfeiting report that we had published in partnership with CRISIL, and we covered various segments like what you see here. Now, some findings. 25 to 30% was the extent of counterfeiting, and that's what the customer expectation was. That the counterfeiting is about this number, which is obviously staggering. 31% people willingly bought a counterfeit product. Now you'd imagine why someone would do that. Someone would do that either because the counterfeit product's cheaper. So, a lot of times you see aspirational goals, like, I want a Louis Vuitton bag, but then I can't afford it, so I'll go for a fake, So 31% actually willingly bought counterfeit. At times it can also be ascribed to the fact that perhaps the good that is desired or needed is not there in his territory. So though he realizes it's a counterfeit product, one still goes and buys that. But 89% of the consumers acknowledged that there is a lot of counterfeit in the market. So, and pharma industry is perhaps, a big target for whatever reasons. And almost 20% of the products in the pharma industry are supposed to be counterfeit. So here's another slide that, agro said 16%, FMCG 28%, consumer durables 17%, automotive 25%, pharma 20%, apparel 31%. And this number is so high because perhaps the perceived damage from a counterfeit apparel is perhaps not as high as a counterfeit medicine. So people probably tend to, buy a cheaper apparel of a brand that is aspirational for them. So they're happy doing that. But when these are what the numbers are. So ASPA is, like I said, the tagline of ASPA is diverse technologies, common goal. So a whole lot of technologies, just about every technology that is out there in the market is welcome and is actually a part of our association now. And they all have a common goal, like I said, which is fight counterfeit. So broadly, our members look at two kinds of solutions. One is the physical, which is, security designing or holograms or OVDs. OVDs are like optically variable image devices. They look like a hologram. So to a lay person, they are both holograms, but technically there's a difference between an OVD and a hologram. So that's the physical side. And then there is the digital technologies, where you have track and trace, complete traceability, QR codes, and these days, an interesting thing is what we call a non-clonable code. A few of the companies, of our member companies, they have developed codes that they claim cannot be duplicated. So that's another interesting development going forward. And then, of course, there is the NFC and RFID. So one's hoping that as the prices of the RFID tags or the chips go down, there will be an even more widespread usage of that. So that is so much on the ASPA front. Just share some more numbers with you. I'm not trying to bore you with numbers, but I'm just trying to share the extent of the counterfeits that are there in the market. So from an industry perspective, 0.5% of the GDP is lost to counterfeit. Now, where is this counterfeiting happening? UP tops by far, and then there's Bihar and Rajasthan. They are the counterfeit hotspots. The three of these states account for almost 45% of the counterfeit that you see in the market in India. On an average, between 2018 and 2022, the number of counterfeit incidents are growing at 20%. When I talk about counterfeit incidents, I'm talking about counterfeit incidents that are reported, growing at 20% a year. And the fake and counterfeit FMCG market is growing at 44% per year, which is much higher than what most legitimate FMCG brands are growing at. On the consumer insights, FMCG apparels and automotive spare parts are the top segments where you see a lot of counterfeit. And 50% of the respondents said counterfeit products are only moderately harmful. 29% said they are very harmful. 22% felt that they are not harmful. These are probably the consumers that probably bought apparels or shoes and stuff like that, which they felt were not really harming them as such. And I've already spoken about how a lot of consumers willingly purchase counterfeit. So this is the extent of the problem that we have in the country. I think a lot of action needs to be taken. Fortunate to have Mr. Mishra here, Director IIP. He earlier made a mention of how sustainability will perhaps be brought into the IIP syllabus, which I think is a great thing going forward. But if I may just request Mr. Mishra, and I'm also on the governing body of IIP, and I would also take it up offline with him. Perhaps the time is also right to consider including authentication solutions and traceability as a part of the curriculum. So the next crop of packaging technologists are armed with that skill as well. And that will help the entire industry to tackle counterfeit more effectively. Raising consumer awareness is right at the top of ASPA agenda. We engage with industry association and also the leading brands at times. I'd just like to cite an example of how a major pharma brand reached out to us about 4 to 5 months ago. They said, look, our medicines are getting counterfeited. We want to understand the counterfeiting landscape. We want to understand how the counterfeiter thinks and exactly what are the technology solutions and other initiatives that can help us arrest this problem. So we had this 1.5 hour long session with the CEO. And then ever since that company, and maybe I can name the company, it's Mankind, right? So Mankind has been very active. The CEO in his social media handle has been talking about the ills of duplication, how fake medicines are affecting, and why they need to be arrested. So that initiative is helping raise awareness amongst the consumers. I mean, that is so important. They're not talking about the counterfeit incidents that they have seen in their brands. What they are talking about is the problem at large. That counterfeiting is a deadly, counterfeiting of medicines particularly, is of course quite a deadly kind of crime, and it needs to be tackled head on. So I think with ASPA, through its other initiatives, such as our publications, we frequently contribute articles to a whole lot of publications, technical journals, and other industry events, where we're talking about the perils of counterfeiting and why the consumer should be aware. On a side note, Nakul, I'm digressing a bit in answering this. You know, there is nothing that cannot be counterfeited. Let us also understand that, right? Given the right incentives, anything can possibly be counterfeited. Look at the US banknote, for instance. It's perhaps one of the most secure documents in the world. Even that is being counterfeit. Obviously, if you look at the percentage, it's minuscule, right? But I'm talking about the state of mind. Given the right incentives, people can come very close to the original. But the mindset of a counterfeiter is that if he sees that the product he's trying to counterfeit has a barrier in terms of a security feature there, chances are that he will move away from counterfeiting that brand to a different brand. Because he doesn't want to get into additional problems with having to tackle, getting hold of those features, because then he's leaving a trail behind. So that is the mindset. So I think the brands don't necessarily need to go to the best and the highest and the most expensive technology there is. I mean, they of course can if they have the budget and the vision to do that. But I'm saying even smaller steps will help kind of contain the problem. And gradually the brand can move on and, get into a full-fledged exercise to eliminate the problem even further. And I would also like to mention an ISO standard here. This is an ISO standard called ISO 22383. Now, this is a standard that is an advisory. You don't get registered under this or certified under this standard. But this standard actually gives out a good strategy on how to deal with counterfeits, how to manage your performance of how you progress against this counterfeit, and how to fine-tune the results better. So it's an ongoing battle. I mean, it's not something that you can wish away in an instance, because the problem has reached that kind of proportions. But the right effort will probably start the initiative for brands and hopefully go on to minimize the threats associated with counterfeit.